It started with a set of footprints, large, precise, freshly pressed into the thin layer of snow behind Maple Ridge Elementary School. At first, the janitor thought they belonged to a big dog, but as he followed the trail past the swings and down to the dumpster, something about the shape made him stop. 4 toes, narrow, stride deep pressure at the front pads. He knew that print a wolf's. By morning, the rumor spread faster than the winter wind. "Did you hear a wolf's been seen near the school?" Parents texted, teachers whispered, and children watched from the windows with nervous excitement. But Ms. Harper, the young science teacher, didn't join the fear. She had grown up near the Rockies, where her father taught her to read the forest not as something dangerous, but alive. She believed fear is often born from stories we never questioned. That evening, after the students went home, she stayed behind. The sunset turned the playground gold. The sound of her boots crunched over the frostbitten grass. Behind the gym, she found them, the prints again, leading toward the trash bins, disappearing into the woods beyond the fence. She felt a quiet curiosity instead of panic. Why here? Why now? Wolves rarely wander this close to people unless they're desperate or alone. Across the Rockies, packs keep to remote forests. But every winter, a few solitary wolves follow scents of food down into the suburbs, not hunters' survivors. That night, Ms. Harper set up a small motion camera on the fence post, angled toward the dumpsters. If the rumors were true, she wanted to see the truth for herself. Hours passed. The school fell silent under moonlight. At 2:13 a.m., the sensor light flickered on. A shadow crossed the playground. Long legs lowered, head breath misting in the cold air. The gray wolf stepped into the frame. Its fur was rough ribs faintly visible. It sniffed the ground, pawed at the frozen trash bags, searching for scraps, not prey. Then it looked straight into the camera, eyes glinting amber against the light. For a heartbeat, it seemed aware it was being watched. Then, it turned, vanished into the trees. The next morning, Ms. Harper reviewed the footage in disbelief. There it was, real, beautiful, vulnerable. "I thought wolves were supposed to be dangerous," she whispered. But what she saw was hunger, not hatred. Still, the town demanded answers. By noon, parents crowded the principal's office. "You must call animal control. What if it comes back?" Ms. Harper stayed quiet, her mind already racing. She knew this was only the beginning, because the next time the wolf returned, it wouldn't come for food. It would come for something far more unexpected. For centuries, wolves have roamed these mountains long before the first school was built. Most people never see them, yet they've always been there, moving silently through the ridges, following the snow. Ms. Harper moved to Maple Ridge 2 years ago. 28, bright-eyed, and always carrying a thermos of coffee and a handful of lesson plans, she teaches 4th grade science with an enthusiasm that fills her classroom. She believes that nature isn't something out there. It's right here around them, breathing, watching, and teaching. Her walls are covered with drawings of mountain lions, owls, and foxes, and in the center hangs a sign that reads, "Every creature has a purpose." On her desk sits a small globe and a framed photo of her father, a park ranger who once guided hikers through these same woods. He taught her to read tracks to tell the difference between fear and respect. She can still hear his voice. If you want to know a place, listen to what the wild still whispers. When the first wolf prints appeared behind the schoolyard, most teachers panicked. But Harper felt something else: curiosity. She wanted to understand, not to chase it away. The next morning, during recess, her students gathered by the window, pointing excitedly. "Ms. Harper, is it true there's a wolf behind the swings?" She smiled, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe. But if it is, that doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes animals get lost. Sometimes they're just hungry. The children giggled, but their eyes lingered on the snow-covered playground, as if the forest had suddenly become something alive, not just a background. That evening, as the last buses rolled away and the parking lot fell silent, Harper stayed behind. The sky turned from orange to indigo, and frost began to form along the fence. She walked toward the dumpsters behind the gym, her breath visible in the cold air. There, imprinted in the thin snow, were the same tracks, large oval with deep pressure at the toes. A wolf's. She crouched, tracing them with her glove. "You've been here more than once," she murmured. The prints led toward the woods, disappearing where the trees began. She looked back at the school, its windows glowing with the last classroom lights. For a moment, she imagined the wolf out there watching from the dark, not as a threat, but as something lost, searching for scraps of warmth in a world made of fences and fear. That night, she set up a small motion camera on a wooden post behind the dumpster. Her fingers shook from the cold as she tightened the mount, making sure the lens faced the spot where the tracks always appeared. When she finished, she stood still, listening. The hum of distant traffic, the flutter of wings. Then, faintly so soft, she almost doubted it, a howl rolled down from the mountains. She froze, heart pounding. It wasn't close, but it carried something ancient, both lonely and beautiful. The kind of sound that reminded her why she became a teacher, to make children feel that same mix of fear and wonder when they encounter the wild. Across town, lights glowed in kitchen windows. Parents talked in hushed voices over dinner. On social media, headlines were spreading fast. Wolf spotted near elementary school, parents alarmed. Local forums exploded with comments. Keep kids inside, call animal control. It's just a matter of time before someone gets hurt. Harper scrolled through the posts on her phone, sighing. She could almost hear her father's voice again. Education is the bridge between fear and understanding. She knew what she had to do. If the town wouldn't see the truth on their own, she would show it to them. As night deepened, the school sat under a blanket of silver light. The red sensor on her camera blinked patiently in the dark. Somewhere beyond the trees, a pair of golden eyes reflected the moon. The wolf had returned, drawn by hunger, driven by instinct. It didn't know that a human heart was waiting to understand it. The following week began like any other cold mornings, steaming coffee and laughter echoing through the halls of Maple Ridge Elementary. The talk about the wolf had started to fade, replaced by spelling tests and art projects. But every night, Ms. Harper checked her motion camera, scrolling through hours of stillness, a few raccoons, a passing fox, the wind nudging the swings. Nothing unusual. Until Wednesday. At 2:41 a.m., the camera caught movement. A shape glided across the frame, tall, lean, silent. Harper pressed pause, her heart racing. The image was blurry but clear enough to recognize the powerful build, the fur matted from snow. The gray wolf had returned. She leaned closer to the screen. The animal moved cautiously, sniffing the air, scanning the dark edges of the playground. Then it approached the dumpster. The lid was half open, and inside something shifted, a faint sound, a cry almost too small to hear. The wolf froze. Its ears perked, head tilted. For a long moment, it stood completely still, eyes fixed on the sound. Then slowly, it stepped closer. Harper's breath caught. The wolf placed its paws against the bin, pushing gently. The lid rattled. Again. Then, with surprising delicacy, the wolf bit at the edge of a plastic bag and pulled. A small, trembling shape tumbled out, a kitten barely a few weeks old, coated in food scraps and frightened beyond measure. The wolf lowered its head, sniffed the kitten. Harper tensed, expecting the worst. But the predator did not attack. Instead, it nudged the tiny creature aside, letting it crawl away. The wolf watched for a few seconds, then turned and vanished into the darkness, silent as a shadow. Harper stared at the screen, frozen. She replayed the clip again and again, each time feeling her throat tighten a little more. The way it had paused, the way it had chosen not to harm, there was no mistaking it. That wasn't instinct alone. That was awareness. She whispered into the quiet of her living room. "You saved it, didn't you?" For a moment, she felt as if she were no longer watching an animal, but witnessing a kind of quiet grace. The next morning, the world outside seemed different. Snow shimmered beneath the sunrise, and the air carried a fragile stillness. Harper arrived early at school, her boots crunching through frost, her camera tucked under her arm. She headed straight to the dumpster behind the gym. There, near the base, tiny paw prints dotted the snow leading toward a patch of bushes by the fence. She followed them carefully, heart pounding. Then she heard a faint mewling sound. The kitten. It was shivering beneath a thin branch half buried in the snow. Harper knelt, wrapping it gently in her scarf. "Hey there, little one. It's okay." The kitten's small body trembled against her hands, but it was alive. She pressed it close to her chest for warmth. As she stood, she glanced toward the forest line, tall pines standing in silence. Somewhere beyond them, the wolf was out there, watching maybe. She couldn't be sure. Inside the classroom, she dried the kitten with a towel and placed it in a cardboard box lined with her old sweater. Her students gathered around, eyes wide with wonder. "Where did it come from?" one asked. She smiled softly. "From a very unexpected friend." That afternoon, she went home and watched the video again, frame by frame, analyzing every movement. The precision, the hesitation, the choice. The wolf had acted with care, and for reasons she couldn't explain, that realization changed something inside her. The story of the dangerous predator that haunted Maple Ridge suddenly didn't fit anymore. What she saw was not a monster, but a survivor. A creature that had wandered too close to human fear, yet still capable of compassion. Harper stayed up late writing an email to the principal and the local wildlife office explaining what she had witnessed. She attached the footage, her fingers trembling, before she hit send. The truth deserved to be seen. When she finally lay down, exhaustion pulling at her, she couldn't shake one thought from her mind. If a wolf could choose kindness, then maybe people could learn to do the same. Sometimes the wild teaches lessons no classroom ever could. That night, as snow fell quietly over the town, the motion camera blinked once more, recording the empty playground, the faint trail of paw prints, and a single set of small cat tracks following behind. By morning, word had already spread. The janitor told the principal told the staff, and by the time the first bell rang, parents were waiting at the gate, arms folded, voices sharp with worry. "We can't have wolves near our children," one father said. "This is dangerous," another mother shouted. Inside the staff room, Harper stood quietly as the principal tried to calm everyone down. He looked tired, papers shaking in his hands. "We'll contact wildlife control. They'll handle it." Harper's stomach tightened. Handle it. She knew what that often meant. Traps, relocation, fear masked as safety. When the meeting ended, she approached him, her voice soft but steady. "Sir, before we decide anything, you should see this." She handed him her tablet and played the footage, the wolf, the dumpster, the kitten. The principal leaned closer, frowning at first, then slowly exhaling. "It saved the cat," Harper nodded. "It didn't attack. It didn't even eat. It just helped. I think this is a teaching moment, not a crisis." He rubbed his temples. "I appreciate your passion, but the parents are scared, and scared people don't listen to reason." That night, after the students went home, Harper sat at her desk. The kitten curled asleep in her scarf. She had named it Ash for the gray smudge of fur on its forehead. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and endless. She glanced at the window toward the forest line barely visible through the fog. "I know you're still out there," she whispered. It was strange how something wild and unseen could feel so close. She had never met the wolf, but somehow she felt its presence like a silent understanding between two creatures trying to do the right thing in a world that misunderstood them both. The next day, during science class, Harper turned the event into a lesson. On the board, she wrote in big letters, "Fear versus curiosity." She asked her students, "What's the difference between being scared of something and wanting to understand it?" The room went quiet. A small hand rose. "If you understand it, maybe you're not scared anymore," said Liam. Harper smiled. "Exactly." The children began drawing wolves not as monsters, but as animals with stories. Some drew them howling under the moon, others beside a tiny kitten. While the students learned about coexistence, the adults struggled with it. Online comments turned bitter. "This teacher is reckless. She's putting kids at risk. It's only a matter of time." Harper didn't reply. Instead, she reached out to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, explaining the situation and asking for help. The officer on the line, a man named Reyes, listened carefully. "We know that wolf," he said. "Male, probably about 5 years old. He's been tracked through these foothills for a month. No aggressive behavior, just scavenging." Relief washed over her. "So he's not dangerous?" "Not unless cornered," Reyes said. "He's surviving. But if the community panics, things can get ugly. We'll keep monitoring. Just don't let anyone try to chase him." That evening, Harper fed Ash a small bowl of milk, watching the kitten lick greedily before curling up on her lap. Her phone buzzed an email from the wildlife office confirming that they had no plans to trap the wolf unless it posed immediate danger. She exhaled, shoulders loosening for the first time all week. Outside, the wind carried another faint howl through the night. It was distant but calm, not a threat, but a reminder. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe in some strange way the wolf knew she was listening. Days passed. Life settled into a fragile rhythm. The wolf stopped appearing on camera, though sometimes she found new tracks in the snow near the dumpster, faint but fresh. Ash grew stronger, playful, chasing pencils across her desk. The children adored it, and soon Harper used the story to teach about ecology, how predators balance nature, how even scavengers have a purpose. But peace never lasts long when fear is nearby. One afternoon, as Harper was leaving, she noticed two men near the school fence, hunters from town, their pickup parked by the curb. One held a rifle case. "Afternoon," one of them said, voice casual but eyes sharp. "You the teacher who saw the wolf?" Harper hesitated. "Yes, I'm Ms. Harper. But you can't be here with that. We're just making sure it doesn't come back," he said, tapping the case. "For safety." Her heart pounded. "If you fire that thing anywhere near school property, you'll be arrested. The wildlife officers are already monitoring the area." The men exchanged looks, then shrugged and left, muttering under their breath. She stood there long after their truck disappeared, her breath fogging the cold air, fear mixing with anger. She realized something then. Protecting the wolf wasn't just about saving an animal. It was about fighting ignorance, the kind that spreads faster than truth. That night, she checked her camera again. Nothing. Just silence and snow. For the first time, she wondered if the wolf had moved on, driven away by noise and fear. But the next morning, she found something new near the fence. A single gray tuft of fur caught on the wire, fluttering in the wind. She held it in her hand, the texture coarse yet soft, as if the forest itself had left her a message. "I'm still here." She placed the fur in a small glass jar on her desk beside Ash's box. To anyone else, it was nothing. To her, it was proof that empathy could cross even the wildest boundaries. In a world where fear speaks loud, kindness often whispers, and sometimes the quietest voice belongs to the wild. Winter in the Rockies can change everything in a single night. One moment, the town is quiet beneath a pale sky, and the next clouds roll in like an army. By sunset, the wind is already howling, the snow falling sideways, thick and endless. Maple Ridge closed early that day. Parents rushed to pick up their children, headlights glowing against the storm. The principal stood by the door, calling over the wind. Everyone home before dark, Harper helped her last student into a car and waved as the vehicle disappeared into the blur. When she stepped outside, the storm hit her full force. Snow cut across her face, the air biting like glass. She wrapped her scarf tighter and glanced toward the tree line behind the school. Even through the curtain of white, she thought she saw something move. A shadow, large, slow. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not tonight," she murmured, hurrying to her car. But as she drove away, her phone buzzed the motion camera app. A red notification blinked. Movement detected. Her hands trembled slightly as she parked again, engine running. The video loaded. Through the pixelated haze of snow, she saw it, the gray wolf back again, stumbling near the dumpster, its fur coated with frost. It looked weak, limping. Then came a crash. The metal roof of the maintenance shed beside the bins had partially collapsed under the snow, trapping the wolf's front paw beneath a heavy beam. For a long moment, the animal struggled, teeth bared, eyes wide with panic. Then it stopped moving, breath-ragged chest heaving. Harper's pulse raced. She knew what the authorities would say. Stay away. Wait for animal control. But she also knew how long it might take them to arrive in a blizzard like this. Minutes could mean life or death. She turned off the ignition, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the storm. The wind roared around her, tearing at her hair. Each step was heavy snow rising past her boots. The flashlight beam danced wildly across the white chaos. When she reached the schoolyard, visibility was near zero, but she followed instinct and the faint outline of the shed ahead. She called out softly, "Easy. I'm here to help." Her voice vanished in the wind. Then she saw it, the wolf half buried in snow, one paw pinned under the beam. It lifted its head weakly, eyes catching the light. For a second, neither moved. Human and wolf staring at each other through the storm. Fear gripped her chest, but something deeper pushed back the memory of the video, the kitten. The quiet mercy of that night. She knelt slowly, keeping her distance, and spoke again. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf growled softly, not in rage, but in pain. Harper took out her phone with numb fingers, calling the emergency number for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. "This is Ms. Harper from Maple Ridge Elementary. The wolf's injured, trapped under debris. I need help. Please hurry." The operator's voice was calm but grim. "Stay in your vehicle if possible. Rescue teams are delayed due to the blizzard." Harper glanced back toward the parking lot. It was already gone, swallowed by white. She couldn't leave. She couldn't just stand there. She crouched closer, assessing the beam. It wasn't huge, maybe manageable if she leveraged it. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Fear is loud. Courage whispers. Listen to the whisper." She found a broken shovel by the wall and wedged it under the beam. "Come on," she muttered, pressing down with all her weight. The beam shifted just an inch, but the wolf jerked in pain, whining. I know, hold on." Another push. The wood cracked. The beam rolled slightly. The paw came free. The wolf tried to stand but collapsed exhausted. Its breath came out in heavy clouds, eyes half closed. Harper stepped back slowly, giving it space. "You're free now," she whispered, The animal didn't move at first. Then, with a shaky effort, it lifted its head, looking straight at her. The snow whirled between them, but she could see those amber eyes, clearly not wild with fear, but aware, present. For a heartbeat, the blizzard disappeared. There was only that moment, two souls caught between survival and trust. A set of headlights cut through the storm. The rescue team. Two wildlife officers hurried forward, voices muffled by the wind. "Ma'am, step back. We'll handle it." They approached carefully, tranquilizer gun ready. Harper nodded, retreating, her knees trembling. They examined the wolf, confirmed the paw was only bruised, then prepared to sedate and transport it for safety. One officer looked at her, his tone softening. "You did good. Most people would have driven away." She smiled faintly, her hair-soaked cheeks red from cold. "He's not what they think he is." The officer paused, meeting her eyes. "No," he said quietly. "He never was." As they lifted the wolf onto a sled, the animal stirred, half-conscious. Its gaze flickered toward Harper once more. The storm wind carried her whisper as she spoke to it, barely audible. "You saved something once. Tonight was my turn." They drove off into the white night, the sled disappearing like a ghost through snow and headlights. Harper stood there long after the flakes melting on her skin, the sound of the wind now strangely gentle, as if the forest itself was sighing in relief. When she finally returned home, Ash greeted her with a soft meow. She knelt, petting the kitten absently, her mind still lost in the storm. She checked her camera feed one last time. The final frame showed the rescue team's lights fading, and in the corner of the screen, something small glimmering in the snow. The beam had crushed one of the motion sensor lights, leaving a faint reflection shaped almost like a paw print. Harper smiled through her exhaustion. "You'll make it," she whispered. "I know you will." Sometimes the line between fear and compassion is only a moment long, a heartbeat, a single choice. And that choice can change everything. Outside, the storm began to quiet. The last flakes fell gently, settling over the playground, the school, and the faint trail leading back into the woods. Somewhere beyond the ridge, under a canopy of snow-laden pines, a wolf lay safe alive, resting, waiting for dawn. By morning, the blizzard had passed, leaving Maple Ridge wrapped in silence. The sun rose over a world remade snow piled high on roofs, icicles hanging from the eaves, and a clean stillness that made it hard to believe the storm had ever existed. But inside the town, a different kind of storm was beginning. Someone had filmed part of the rescue, a few blurry seconds of Harper standing near the wolf as the wildlife officers arrived. The clip appeared online with the caption, "Teacher risks life to save dangerous predator behind school." Within hours, it spread everywhere. On social media, people took sides. Some praised her bravery. Others condemned her recklessness. What kind of teacher endangers children like that? She should be fired. That wolf could have attacked. By noon, reporters were calling the school. Cameras parked outside the gates. Microphones waiting. Harper arrived to find the principal already speaking to the local news. His expression was strained. The district takes safety seriously. Ms. Harper acted on her own judgment, and while the outcome was positive, procedures must be reviewed. She stood off to the side, the cold biting her cheeks, trying to stay calm. It wasn't the attention she wanted. All she had ever wanted was for people to understand. Inside the teacher's lounge, whispers filled the air. "I can't believe she did that. Honestly, I would have just stayed home." She sat quietly scrolling through her phone. Her inbox overflowed messages from strangers, wildlife advocates, angry parents. One email stood out. "You reminded us what compassion looks like." It made her smile just a little. That afternoon, a meeting was called. The principal, a district representative, and a wildlife officer, Reyes, sat across from her. Reyes spoke first. The wolf's recovering well. We transported him to our rehabilitation center near Estes Park. Minor injury, no aggression. Harper exhaled relief, flooding her. He's alive. Reyes nodded. Yes. We're calling him Echo. The principal cleared his throat. Ms. Harper, we appreciate your concern, but you must understand this has become a public issue. Parents are frightened. We need to restore confidence. I didn't do this for attention, she said quietly. I just couldn't let him die there. Reyes leaned forward. You did the right thing, Ms. Harper. You also reminded us what fear can make people forget, that wild doesn't mean evil. His words hung in the air like a small flame in a dark room. That night, Harper walked home through streets still heavy with snow. Every house glowed warm behind frosted windows. She could hear laughter inside families, safe children sleeping, and she wondered how many of those same homes still whispered about her. She paused by the edge of the forest where the school lights faded. The trees stood silent under the moon. Somewhere beyond them, Echo was healing. She thought of his eyes, the way he had looked at her not as prey or threat, but as something he recognized. Maybe the wild had been speaking to her all along, not through words, but through silence, through the way it endured misunderstanding, yet kept returning. A few days later, the town board invited her to a public forum, a safety discussion. The auditorium filled with parents, reporters, and curious neighbors. On stage sat the Principal Officer Reyes and Ms. Harper. The first questions were sharp. What if that wolf had attacked? What message are we sending to our children that predators belong near schools? Next time it could be worse. Harper waited for the noise to quiet. Then she stood, voice calm but firm. You're right, wolves can be dangerous. Any wild animal can. But what we saw wasn't danger, it was misunderstanding. That wolf came here because we left food in the open, because hunger doesn't know fences. It didn't come for us, it came for survival. Murmurs spread through the crowd. She continued, her tone softening. That night, it had every reason to hurt, to lash out. But it didn't. It chose to trust just long enough for us to save each other. Maybe the lesson isn't about wolves. Maybe it's about us. The room fell silent. Even the most skeptical faces seemed uncertain. Reyes nodded subtly from his seat. After the meeting, a few parents approached her quietly. One mother said, "My daughter told me she wants to draw wolves for her art project now. She said they're not bad, just lonely." Harper smiled. That's how it starts, with one story. Over the next week, she worked with Reyes and the school board to organize something new, an event called Understanding the Wild. It would be held in the gymnasium, open to everyone in town. Students would create posters about local wildlife. Rangers would speak about safety and coexistence. The night of the event, the gym glowed with soft yellow lights. Children's drawings lined the walls, deer under the moon, bears near rivers, and in the center, dozens of wolves. Some fierce, some gentle, all watched over by stars. Parents entered hesitantly, but as the presentations began, tension faded. One slide showed a still image from Harper's video, the wolf freeing the kitten. Gasps rippled through the room. "This is what really happened," Harper said, voice steady but warm. This was Echo. He didn't hurt anyone. He reminded us what empathy looks like. A boy raised his hand. "Ms. Harper, will the wolf come back?" She smiled softly. "Maybe not here, but wolves have a way of leaving their mark even when they're gone." The audience applauded quietly, at first, then louder, the sound echoing off the gym walls like a second heartbeat. In that moment, fear began to lose its grip. The town that once whispered about danger was now listening to understanding. And for the first time, Harper felt that Echo's howl had truly reached them. Weeks passed and winter began to fade. The snow receded from the rooftops, revealing patches of brown earth beneath the melting white. The story of the wolf Echo, as the wildlife officers called him, had settled into local legend. The news cameras were gone. The gossip quieted, and life at Maple Ridge returned to its rhythm. But for Ms. Harper, something had changed forever. Every morning she would glance toward the forest line behind the school, as if expecting to see those amber eyes again. Every night, she still checked her inbox, hoping for an update from Officer Reyes. Then, one day, it arrived. The email was short. Echo has fully recovered. He'll be released back into the Rockies tomorrow at dawn. You're welcome to attend if you'd like. She read the message 3 times, her hands trembling slightly. It felt like the closing of a chapter, the kind you're not ready to finish, but know must end. The next morning, before sunrise, Harper drove along the mountain road toward the rehabilitation center. The sky was still dark, a faint silver rim glowing over the ridges. The air smelled of pine and cold stone. She parked near a fenced clearing where the wildlife team waited. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she approached. Reyes greeted her with a nod. "You made it." "I had to," she said softly. "I couldn't let him go without saying goodbye." He gestured toward a transport crate at the edge of the field. Inside, Echo stood calm but alert, his fur thick and shining now, eyes reflecting the pale dawn light. For a moment, Harper forgot to breathe. He looked stronger whole again. Reyes smiled faintly. "You gave him that chance." She stepped closer to the fence, her heart aching with an emotion she couldn't name. Gratitude, maybe. Or recognition. "Hey there," she whispered. "You remember me?" The wolf's gaze met hers through the bars. No sound, no movement, just that steady, timeless look, as if the forest itself were watching her through his eyes. When the team unlatched the crate, Echo didn't bolt. He stepped out slowly, sniffing the air, taking in the scent of pine and snow. His breath clouded in the morning chill. Then, without a sound, he turned toward the mountains. Harper watched him walk not as a captive leaving, but as something returning home. His paws pressed into the soft snow, each step lighter than the last, until he stopped at the tree line and looked back one final time. The wind picked up, carrying his faint howl through the valley. It wasn't a cry of pain, but of freedom. Tears blurred her vision. She whispered into the wind, "Goodbye, Echo." In that moment, she realized something simple yet profound: love doesn't always mean keeping. Sometimes it means letting go, trusting that what you saved can now save itself. Reyes placed a hand on her shoulder. "He'll be okay. They always find their way back." She nodded, still staring at the horizon. "Maybe we all do." Later that week, Harper returned to her classroom with a small flash drive. She plugged it into the projector, and the video of Echo's release filled the screen. Her students fell silent, watching as the wolf disappeared into the mountain fog. When the clip ended, no one spoke. Then, little Liam raised his hand. Did he look back? Harper smiled gently. Yes, just once. The class erupted in soft gasps. Another student whispered, "Maybe he was saying thank you." She looked at their faces wide-eyed, curious, unafraid, and felt a warmth bloom in her chest. The fear that once filled this room had been replaced by understanding. Children are born without fear of the wild. It's the world that teaches them to be afraid. But if the world can teach fear, it can also teach empathy. That evening, Harper stayed late at school, grading papers, as the sunset painted the windows gold. Ash, the kitten, now half-grown, curled on her lap. Outside, the snow had melted into rivulets running down the slope. The air was clear, the forest quiet. Then faintly, she heard it, a sound carried by the wind. A distant howl. long, low, and hauntingly familiar. She froze, listening. Another answered from far away, a second voice joining the first. Her heart leapt. "He found them," she whispered. "He found his pack." She stepped outside, her breath misting in the cold twilight. The mountains glowed under the last light of day. Somewhere beyond, a wolf's call echoed again, not lonely this time, but whole. And there, beneath the fading sun, Harper smiled. Because she knew the lesson wasn't just for her students. It was for her too, that when you choose understanding over fear, the world doesn't just become safer, it becomes more alive. The camera panned upward, following the line of the mountains, until the forest disappeared into the golden clouds. Spring arrived slowly in Maple Ridge, as if the mountains themselves were waking from a long sleep. The snow melted into glittering streams, the grass returned in patches of green, and the forest once again filled with birdsong. For the first time in months, the world didn't feel divided between wild and human, it felt whole. At the edge of town, the elementary school's playground thawed from its icy shell. Children ran through puddles, their laughter mixing with the sound of robins overhead. Ms. Harper stood by the window of her classroom watching them. She had taught science here for 2 years, but lately it felt like she was learning more than she was teaching. On the bookshelf sat a new edition, a photo of Echo taken by the wildlife officers just before his release. The wolf stood proud against a backdrop of pines and snow. Beneath it, a handwritten note from Officer Reyes read, "He's been spotted with a pack north of Estes, strong and free." Beside the photo lay the small jar of fur Harper had once found near the fence, and a folded newspaper clipping titled, "The Wolf Who Taught a Town." It was strange how a single story could change so much, how one act of compassion could ripple through an entire community. In the weeks that followed, Maple Ridge transformed. The school launched a new program called Coexistence in the Wild, where students learned about local ecosystems, predators, and the balance of nature. Murals appeared on the school walls, painted wolves running alongside deer mountains, glowing under twilight. The parents who had once protested now volunteered to help build new secure bins for school waste, so no wild animals would be drawn to human food again. Fear had given way to responsibility. During one of the outdoor lessons, Harper led her students on a small hike to the ridge behind the town. The children wore backpacks full of notebooks and sketch pads, their faces flushed with excitement. At the top, they looked out across miles of forest, the endless green ocean where Echo now roamed. "Do you think he can see us?" one girl asked. Harper smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Maybe not, but I think he can feel that we're not afraid anymore." The children sat quietly, drawing the view, the sun glinting off their pencils. It was a simple scene, nothing dramatic, no music, no headlines yet. It felt like the most important moment of all. The sound of pages flipping replaced the howls that once filled the night. Understanding had taken root where fear used to grow. That evening, back at school, Harper walked past the new mural near the gym, a giant painting of a wolf and a small kitten sitting side by side under a crescent moon. Beneath it were the words her students had chosen. "Fear fades when we understand." She stopped tracing the words with her fingertips, a small smile curling on her lips. Echo's story had become part of the town's heartbeat, told and retold not as a warning, but as a reminder. That even in a world built of walls and fences, empathy could still find its way through. The following weekend, she received a call from a local radio station inviting her to share the story for Earth Day. Sitting in the small studio microphone before her, she spoke softly. "We often think protecting nature means keeping it away from us, but sometimes it means letting it come closer long enough for us to listen. I didn't save a wolf, I just gave him a chance to save himself. And in return, he reminded us who we could be." There was silence on the other end, the good kind. The kind that means someone somewhere was listening. After the recording, Harper walked outside. The sky was painted in shades of rose and gold, the air carrying that clean pine-sweet scent of early summer. She wandered toward the edge of the forest, the same place she had once seen the tracks. The snow was gone now, but she could still imagine the prints deep and certain, a path carved by something wild, yet familiar. She closed her eyes and breathed in. The wind brushed her face gently, almost like a whisper. Echo was gone, but the silence he left behind wasn't empty. It was full of lessons of memory of connection. He had become part of the mountain, part of the town, part of her. In every howl carried by the wind, she could still hear him, not as a ghost, but as a voice reminding her that courage and kindness are two sides of the same wild heart. As she turned to leave, the faintest sound drifted through the trees, a distant howl far away but unmistakable. Harper smiled. "Good night, Echo." And for the first time, the forest didn't seem wild at all. It seemed home. Sometimes stories about the wild are really stories about us, about what we fear, what we choose to protect, and what we dare to understand. The wolf behind the school was never a threat. He was a mirror reflecting back everything we needed to see our fear, our ignorance, and our capacity for compassion. For generations, we've been told that wolves are villains, creatures of darkness in the corners of fairy tales. But the truth is quieter and far more beautiful. Wolves don't hunt people. They hunt balance. They keep the forest alive, the herds moving the ecosystem whole. And yet fear has always been louder than fact. Until one night in a small town beneath the Rockies, a teacher saw something different, a glimpse of mercy in the eyes of the wild. And from that moment, everything changed. What if every act of understanding, no matter how small, could rewrite an entire story? What if we chose to listen before we judged, to teach instead of fear? The children of Maple Ridge no longer see a monster in the woods. They see Echo, the wolf who saved a life, the teacher who listened, and the lesson that followed. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to look closer. Echo's howl still drifts across those mountains. Maybe you'll never hear it, but its meaning is simple coexistence. The wild isn't something to conquer, it's something to share. If you stand still long enough, you might notice the same wind that carries your breath also carries theirs. The same earth that holds your footsteps holds their prints too. We are not separate stories. We are the same book, just different pages of life trying to find our place in the same world. So the next time fear whispers, remember Echo. Remember that behind every story of danger, there might be one of hope. Behind every fence, there might be something worth understanding. And behind every school, every home, every heart, there's still a bit of the wild waiting to be respected, not feared. Because fear divides us. But understanding that brings the wild home.